Hello. Good morning, everyone. I want to ask if there are any questions from anything that we've discussed or anything that has come to your mind in reference to your life, our lives, anybody's life, for that matter. So, are there any questions? If there are, please raise them now. No questions. For the past few weeks, we've been talking about, maybe I should say months, we've been talking about Abraham and his lineage and how it relates to where we are today. And the last time we spoke about the meaning of Abraham and his lineage, especially when it comes to Jacob, and I'm sorry, especially when it comes to Isaac, rather, and Ishmael. And tacked onto that is Jacob and Ishmael and his sons. So I want to know, are we clear as to the meaning of what is written in those passages of Scripture? Or are there any questions about it? To refresh your memory, we talked about that we talked about Jesus being a descendant of both Ishmael and Isaac. We spoke about the relationship between the two and how that has become an issue in today's religious circles. How Ishmael had been cast aside as being simply, as they related to him, a bastard child, which he was not, of course, and how he has been relegated to being irrelevant to history and to religion itself, when in actuality he is very relevant because of his name, but also because of the role that he played in the development of the allegory about Abraham and his descendants and the metaphorical aspects of the meaning of his name. Also, we talked about how we have to look beyond individual people when we are referencing the descendants of Abraham, or for that matter, any of the people who are listed there are in the Bible, because the names are really a description of what role was being played at that time. It is a message from the Creator guiding us along this passageway, helping us to see with a clarity the not only the role that these people represented, but also to help us see a clear pathway to being who we were created to be, and that is Elohim. In order for us to do that, we have to be able to hear Elohim speak to us. We have to be able to embrace what the Scriptures are saying, even though we have been told that we cannot understand them or not supposed to understand all of it. And we have been told that our relationship with our Creator is a distant one, and we can only be in a close relationship with our Creator after death. However, we have seen that there is that is far from being true. Our relationship with our Creator has never faltered. It's always been there. It is our becoming aware of the continued relationship that we have and has always had with the one who brought everything into existence. And we also were made aware of not only being Elohim, but understand that by virtue of our being created the way we were in your image and likeness, we have unspeakable power over our lives, and we have unspeakable influence in this world today, an influence that is far beyond what we could ever imagine. And that influence is one of positivity, designed to bring humanity to a place of balance, that balance being a place where all men realize that we are created from the same substance, and the substance from which we are created are the principles of the kingdom, some of which are loving kindness, peace, mercy, etc. And that by virtue of our being created in this manner, it is incumbent upon us to bring this world of physicality to a place of unicity with the world of the spiritual, so that as above can certainly be what it is below. And in doing so, we would right the wrongs in this world of physicality. But not only that, we would bring this world to a place where it begins to see the necessity of embracing the unicity that we have with our creators. Any questions or comments? Okay, having said that, when we look at what we have talked about, we now began to see that the entrance of Jesus into the earth was the culmination of the lineage of Abraham. And that culmination of the lineage of Abraham brought into this world one who was to set everything in order. Jesus said he came to rightly interpret the law, which really says he came to rightly interpret the demands of our Creator. And in doing so, we see many things that he did that appeared on the surface to be minuscule or physical, but they had spiritual connotations. When Jesus came in contact with females, we see how he related to them, which was totally different than how the priestly laws dictated that a male and female should interact with each other, especially those who were outside of their family structure. We see Jesus at the well with the woman who was an outcast, and we see how Jesus restored her self-image, her self-esteem. We also see in that conversation with her how Jesus made an emphatic statement that the day would come, and is now, that we will no longer worship in Jerusalem or in the mountain, but they that worship Elohim would do it in spiritual truth, which means that regardless of who you are or where you come from, you have opportunity, you have an open doorway to be submissive to the one who created you. And in doing so, that submission does not relegate you to being a slave, but a servant to humanity, so that all of humanity's eye can be open in order for it to see what its purpose is as well. What Jesus was actually doing was restoring femininity to the place of authority where it was from the beginning, and should never have been removed from that place, because, as we have seen through Abraham's lineage, it is the feminine aspects of our Creator that actually not only restores but maintains an understanding of our relationship and the necessity of our understanding that relationship that we have with our Creator, whether it be Sarah, Hagar, Rebecca, or Rachel. All of them in their actions spoke to the necessity of embracing, respecting, and following the guidance of the feminine aspects of our Creator, which means that we are supposed to be obedient to the Shekinah, because the Shekinah is actually what birthed everything spiritual into this earth realm. We have, in our ventures of religion, relegated the Shekinah to someone who shows up on Sunday morning, or someone who initiates a crying spell in our lives, resulting in the flowing of tears, and we have not truly embraced or seen the Shekinah for what it actually is. And whether we recognize it or not, the reality of Abraham's lineage speaks directly to the Shekinah. As a matter of truth, all of the females in the lineage of Abraham and others speaks to the Shekinah and how it is represented in our lives and how it should be seen in our lives. To this day, there is serious misunderstanding about who the Holy Spirit is, and those misunderstandings into existence by the has been brought into existence by those who wanted to propagate religion or for selfish reasons, those who wanted to make sure that we are in obedience to them as opposed to being obedient to our Creator. So we have an opportunity now to be guided by the truth, by the true nature, and by a deep desire to understand, but more importantly than understanding, to live in accordance with the dictates of the one who brought us into existence. I know I'm talking a lot. Hope I'm not rambling. But I want to see if there are questions or comments in relationship to what has been said thus far. Questions or comments?
Thanks. This is Vanilla. I have a question. Are we all descendants of Abraham and Sarah?
Yes, we are. The descendants of Abraham and Sarah has very little to do with physical birth. It has everything to do with spiritual embracement, or spiritually embracing the concepts of spirituality. What the problem with this, Ramel?
Okay.
Would you mute your phone, please? The problem with this,
It's me. I'm sorry.
We have actually taken everything that's spiritual and made it physical. We have made everything fit the mold that we as blemished humans want it to fit. Blemished physical beings have wanted it to fit. We totally discount, without actually saying it, our spiritual reality that we are. We have relegated worship to an expression of physical actions. We have relegated our unicity with our Creator to physical actions. Example, what we have done, even though the Scriptures have told us that we are to be baptized with the Spirit, we have relegated our profession of faith, of trust in our Creator, to something of baptism, which is a physical thing. And we have incorporated so many rituals into our religious settings until we have pretty much totally pushed the spiritual out. And those things that are spiritual that we don't understand, we make it up as we go. We have relegated the spiritual in some settings to being an initiator of shouting, as opposed to being a living entity that guides us through our soul to a place of understanding our Creator. So when you talk about being descendants of Abraham, we are actually speaking to being descendants of the understanding that Abraham sought and embraced about the spiritual aspects of this life in this earth realm. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Pastor, I have a question. What was it that Jesus said Abraham longed for?
To see his day. What he meant by that is that Abraham longed to see someone come into this earth and clarify what he was shown and what he was told when he changed from Abram to Abraham, that the hay was added to his and Sarah's name. Jesus was saying that Abraham's desire from the inception was to see this happen. Why did Jesus say that? Because the priests had become so selfish and self-indulgent until religion had taken center stage to everything else, and the spiritual guidance that was offered by our Creator through an understanding of what Abraham and his descendants meant was no longer a prevalent, was no longer was visible in the religious settings, and Evelyn, that is no different than it is today. It is the priest who makes up the rules, regardless of whether or not they are represented in the Scriptures or represented in a spiritual way in their books of holiness. So, Abraham, we can say the same thing that Jesus said about Abraham longing to see this day, longing to see a day when the spiritual essence of being would overshadow any religious thoughts or would overshadow any desires to be extricated from the spiritual and connected to that of the physical.
So is that what we're doing now? Sometimes it seems like we're not, maybe it's just me, it's like we're not getting anywhere sometimes, but then it is, you know what I mean? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It appears, yes, it does. We are in the process of filling the earth with enlightenment. We are in the process of putting into the macro what truth actually is. And by doing that, what we are doing is not only expressing what Abraham saw, but also expanding on what Jesus taught. And the expansion of that gives us opportunity to be the influences that we are in this earth realm, so that we can begin to see the changes that our hearts desire, yet cannot truly paint a picture of what those changes look like. We can see portions of those changes in process, but what they're going to look like in the end, we have no clue. Does that make sense?
It does. And I know we can't look at what's on the surface because there is a much bigger picture with what's happening now in the universe. It seems like everyone is on edge. I hear people crying on my phone every day, almost, and it seems like they have no hope.
And they don't. And honestly, we who are on this journey of truth, we honestly should be the last ones to feel like nothing is changing or it's taking too long. When we express, and I say we, inclusive of me, when we express the desire to see things sped up, when we feel like nothing is changing, that is another way of saying we don't have any hope. That is another way of losing hope. If we who are being expressive of truth and searching for truth and traveling this journey and being the tip of the spear of understanding and wisdom, if we are expressive of having a hope, if we express that we're losing hope, what should our expectations be for those who don't even know what this journey is? If they are picking up, they meaning those who are searching for something better. If they are able to pick up from the macro the truth that we put there in the macro, they are also able to pick up on our lack of hope, our struggle to hold on to hope. And maybe that's what's enhancing their loss of hope. Maybe when we began to deal with ourselves at those moments when we are seeing with our eyes and saying that there is no hope or taking too long or when are things going to change, we need to check ourselves and check each other every single time we express that. I'm not saying to lie and say you don't feel it, but I am saying we need to check it. We need to talk ourselves through it so we can maintain, we can increase, we can move beyond hope and see the reality of what is. It's incumbent upon us to be leadership this journey at every step of the way. It doesn't mean that we are not going to struggle, but it does mean we should not be living a life of continuous struggle. Even though there are periods when the struggle is there, if we are unable to move ourselves through that struggle and see the light that's in that struggle, we need to call someone to help us get through it so that we don't leave that image of the lack of hope in the macro for those who are searching for hope. Does that make sense, Al? If you're talking, you're on mute.
I'm not. So we're the light, we're the beacon for the world, the light for the world, Pastor?
Yes. This is it. Jesus says that I am the light of the world. If Jesus is the light of the world, so are we. And being the light of the world, Jesus is saying that we are the light for all of the diversity that exists in this earth realm. The diversity of language, the diversity of thought, the diversity of races, the diversity of cultures, everything that fits into this word, this idea of diversity, is what we are the light to. And the reason we are the light for that is because in the midst of all of that diversity, there is indeed a common thread that holds all of us together in one place. And the commonality of that thread is that all of us are created in the same way from the same source for the same purpose. When we embrace that, then we look beyond race and culture and all the other things that have been designed to divide us and to build walls up between us. Does that help you?
Yes, sir. It does. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah. Good morning, Pastor. I just want to, concur with Evelyn because, again, as many times, like she's not the only one that's going through these crucibles, these situations, and I too, have just, gone through a week of just total being there to listen and being the light, for others. But there was a, profound statement you said last, week in terms of preparing our hearts to embrace what we're getting ready to experience. And I believe that we are experiencing that which is preparing us to be there for others. But I think what has helped me is in terms of just the affirmation of knowing that, I am Elohim. And that has just, given me, that strength and endurance just to be able to be there in time of need. But at the same time, as you're saying, when we're in those moments, just being able to reach out, to those, that, we can draw, spirit and truth and strength from. So I truly believe that we're in a time that we're getting ready to experience some things that, we just need to, again, appreciate the oneness that we all are. So I just wanted to share those thoughts because I concur with Evelyn that I think some of us, but not all, are having these moments of, exploration in terms of what we're doing. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Honestly, every one of us go through a period where we are in a crucible. And in that crucible, the dross is burned away in order for us to exit the crucible with a a desire for change for the benefit of humanity. The crucible experience is not a one-time thing. As a matter of fact, if you don't go through a crucible, you cannot lead effectively. If you don't go through a crucible periodically, you have a tendency to lose a contact with the pain and suffering that humanity is enduring. The crucible is simply an opportunity to remind us not only are we all one, but also to remind us that we are indeed our brother's keeper. And the pain that we suffer in that crucible is also the pain that is being endured by those who don't know how to exit the crucible and don't understand the purpose of the crucible. Because we have been told that everything is going to be great when we accept Jesus in our lives. And we all know that that did not happen. The idea of the struggle that Evelyn mentioned and George concurred with is necessary. But what's more important than that is for us to recognize the reason is necessary. For we have not a perpetuator who has not endured the suffering that we have, that we endure. If we are going to be deliverers for humanity, then we are going to suffer the pain of humanity as well. If you remember Jesus suffering the pain of humanity, he did nothing to warrant the suffering that he had to endure. Yet during the period of his suffering, he held fast to what he knew the truth to be. Even when he was there in the garden prior to the crucifixion, crying out to a wound, saying, remove this cup from me if it be thy will, he was recognizing the pains of his soul, but at the same time holding on to what he knew the truth to be. And by doing so, he was able to endure the most heinous suffering that anyone could have dreamed of, especially during that period of time. And him recognizing that it was not justified for him to be beaten for no reason at all. He did not challenge those who did it. He did not call them racist. He did not seek redress in terms of having them punished for what they did. He simply said, Father, forgive them because they really are not aware of what they are doing. They are doing this purely out of ignorance. So when we take that into account and couple that to the sayings of Jesus, when Jesus said, if you have the faith that I have, you can ask the Father what you will, and it will be delivered to you, or given unto you. And if you trust as I trust, not only will you do what I've done, but greater things than these you will do. Excuse me a second. Okay? Greater things than these you will do. So, that being the case, then instead of us grumbling about the unjust beatings that we endure, whether they be physical, whether they be tangible beatings in other ways that are not physical, our response to them has to be at the very least what Jesus' response was, and that is, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. They are not aware of this. As opposed to cursing them, he did not curse them. He did not revile them. He did not castigate them. He did not demean them at all. He simply endured the burdens that were placed upon him, unjustifiably, of course. Yet, he held on to what he knew the truth to be. Why? Because he knew that by enduring those injustices, he would be not only setting an example for those who were to come after him, but he also was putting in the macro the strength that would be needed in order for those who would come after him to endure and rise above the injustices that were perpetrated against them. And here we are today in the midst of the same injustices that Jesus faced, that Jesus endured. Here we are in the midst of them. And the question becomes very clearly, how are we going to respond to them? Are we going to respond to them as though there is no hope? Are we going to respond to them as though we have not been taught what the truth of the word is? Are we going to respond to them in a way that we are seeking pity from someone? Or are we going to have a response that's going to shift the burden of the suffering to a place of balance, peace, and joy? Those are the choices we have. So we have to each ask ourselves, where do we stand on this? And we also must ask ourselves whether or not it is justifiable for us to make excuses to embark and take part in journeys that are not leading us to the place of balance simply because we want to get along with people, or simply because we are in the midst of people who will look at us differently if we disagree with them, knowing that they are wrong. We cannot agree, we cannot agree with wrong just to be accepted or to avoid a challenge. And I'm hoping that this all makes sense to you guys. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Pastor, this is Charles. So what you're saying, if we're gonna be the light for the people, and we're gonna be our brother's keeper, so we have to be hope for everyone.
Have to be what, Charles?
We have to be hope, because it's like this. It ain't like you can't see hope. You got to be it for people. You got to be it for the ones that don't understand and can't see it. We got to be it. I don't know what I'm saying right now, but I understand what I'm trying to say, that when God said that you can only come to him in spirit and truth. So we've been doing everything in the physical, and we never understood that. So now we're understanding it more now.
So, you're absolutely right, Charles, and you do know what you're saying. And what you're saying is, if we are not the hope of those who are seeking something better, or those who don't even know that there's something better, then there is absolutely no hope. Why? Because it is our responsibility to be the hope that everyone is seeking. And knowing that when they seek and find the source of hope, that hope will carry them to a place of knowing. And in doing so, will shift their vision from their eyes to their eye. And they will be able to see the substance and principles of what the kingdom actually is. As to worshiping in spiritual truth, if you don't know what the truth of the Scriptures is, how is it that you can submit to that truth? In order for us to submit to that truth, we must embrace the reality. I think Evan mentioned it earlier, that we are the light of the world. Jesus said, I say that ye are the light of the world. We must embrace that reality in order for us to be the hope that others are seeking, so that they can move to the place of knowing that this is real, as opposed to hoping that it's real. Thank you, Charles. Anyone else? Any questions or comments?
So, Pastor, we must stand on what we're being taught, and we're not to compromise. Because I heard you saying something about challenge earlier, and I don't know if I missed it or not. So we ought to stand on what we know and what we believe, and we don't have room to compromise. Am I correct at that? And what I mean by that, you don't just fall for anything.
Yes, you are correct, Evan. Compromising is another way of denying Jesus. If you deny me before men, I will deny you before a boom. Is that not the scripture? When you compromise the truth, you are denying the teachings of Jesus. You are disconnecting yourself mentally from the Creator, and you are inviting calamity into your life. You cannot compromise what you know the truth to be just because you want to be accepted or because you don't want the challenge that's coming. In my particular case, my refusal to compromise what I knew the truth to be resulted in me not being invited to preach at various periods or to preach in churches. As a matter of fact, one of the prominent preachers told a group of preachers that he suggests that they not have any dealings with me because I was no longer Baptist, and what I was teaching was not Baptistic. And in doing that, one of the people who were supposed to come to me as a revivalist that year never contacted me. When I called them, they told me they had mixed up my date with another one, and they wouldn't be there. I found out that they were not coming because of that preacher having called them. I refused to compromise what I knew the truth to be in order to be accepted by that particular preacher who were making those phone calls. My conclusion was this: if their desire to be accepted by that particular preacher was stronger than their desire to deal with the truth and honor their commitment, then I didn't want to have anything to do with them anyway, because they were not trustworthy. What am I saying to you? Regardless of what you have to endure, you must stand up to the challenge when it comes in your midst. You cannot submit to anything that challenges the truth. If the question comes to you, you respond to it. If you're in the midst and the question doesn't come to you, you cannot amen. You cannot appear. You must avoid the appearance of agreeing with something that you know is wrong, that you know is not the truth. At some point in our lives, we ought to get to a place where we are sick and tired of saying, they ain't talking about nothing, but you keep going. Where we're sick and tired of saying that the truth is not going forward, but you keep going for the teaching. What's the point? If you are not interjecting the truth, then what's the point in your being there? At some point, these decisions have to be made. They cannot be made, our decisions cannot be made based upon being accepted by a certain group, a certain individual, or not even being accepted by our family. Jesus said, I have given you a new family. Jesus is saying, if you are rejected because of your standing on what you have been taught, standing on what I am teaching you, Jesus is saying there is a family in existence for you. And in that family, you are embraced, and you are not forced to believe something just to be accepted. You are standing on what you have embraced the truth to be, what you know the truth is. And at some point, we have to take that stance, because when we don't, we are sending a signal to the universe that it is okay to vacillate when it comes to the truth. We're saying that it's okay to play the game, to pretend to go along when we know that is not the truth. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? So what do we...
Pastor,
Yes.
I have a question. Based on everything that you've been saying and what we're talking about and the questions that have been raised and the comment that Charles made about us being hope for everyone, when the scripture tells us to be anxious for nothing, and I see anxious as being wavering, not being balanced, and getting into fear or dread or whatever the case may be, when it tells us to be anxious for nothing but, through prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, we are to make our requests known to God, okay, based on everything that you're saying. And we are the bearers of truth. We are enlightenment in the midst of any darkness that we may find ourselves in. Is that telling us that when we are in these situations to stay balanced, that we need to go into worship and not waver from anything that we've requested of God based on what we know to be truth? And by that requesting of God, meaning one with the Father, knowing what we are supposed to be doing, does that bring us to a place of balance? Or am I seeing that scripture wrong?
No, it doesn't. You're seeing it right. We are not to be fearful of anything. We are to hold fast to what our desires have been to our Creator. We are to hold fast to them even at the expense of our lives. Why? Because knowing what the truth is more important than being accepted by someone who has no desire to know what the truth is. And by virtue of our standing on that truth, it gives truth the opportunity to at least soften, if not change, the heart of those who we are resistant to. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, it does. And I guess the other part, with Thanksgiving, because I've been doing well with all that I've seen in the news with the elections and all of this. I've not wavered. The only thing that got me to a place of not being balanced was the Ahmaud Arbery trial that's going on now, and how they portrayed him as running, not jogging, could have been an armed black man, and these men said they're not guilty. Even though I know what the truth is, and I know what we are to stand on, that made me feel some type of way. And so I guess my part of my question is to the Thanksgiving part. Do I go into worship? Do I breathe? What I'm asking is, what does it take when I know I'm not where I need to be to bring me back to where I need to be? If I've got to remain hope for everyone, then I can't let go of hope myself. So I'm asking, I guess, based on that scripture, how do I get to that place of thanksgiving?
I can tell you how I get there and got there in this particular case. When the announcement came that there were 11 white jurors and one African, I felt some kind of way in the beginning. I simply chuckled on the inside, and it dawned on me, this is an opportunity for us to see something. We have said that racism is not the problem of the African. Racism is the Caucasian's problem. That's white folk problem. They created it. They got to solve it. So this is a case where we will be able to see how far we have moved in terms of dealing with racism, or how far they have anyway, in dealing with racism, or we at a stalemate. The outcome of this trial in southern Georgia will speak volumes about as to where white folk are when it comes to racism. And that's how I came to the place of thanksgiving. Why? Because, number one, regardless of what happened, Arbery is still dead. Number two, who knows if this was not done purposely by the Creator in order to give us a sign or to show us where we are with racism. These men found guilty. These men found not guilty also speaks volumes. So I see everything now as a message for us, an opportunity to read the signs of the times. The injustices that Jesus endured were not challenged by Jesus. The injustices that he endured, he faced them by saying, forgive them. So my thanksgiving is in recognizing that nothing can happen without the consent of the Creator of the universe. So what do I get from it? What do I see in it? Is my question. I hope that helps you, Kathy.
It does, because it's just reminding me to reframe everything, not to see it with the eyes, but to see it through the lens of the eye, and just reframe it.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Hey, Rep, this is Charles again. I saw that situation the way you just saw it. If white people singing this, and they ought to see the wrong in this more than we should. That's how I saw it. And they should speak up now.
Well, they should do what's in their hearts. See, if it's not our problem, why are we engaging it? And I'm not just speaking to you, Charles. I'm talking to every one of us. If this is the problem of Caucasians, racism is their problem, why are we engaging it? What we do is look at how it's being dealt with. What we do is gauge what happens, and when we gauge that, we get some direction as to where we stand in the midst of all of this in terms of bringing balance. I hope that helps you, sir.
It did.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. No questions, no comments. Well, again, what we have begun to see today, or not begun to see today, but what we see and are talking about today is primarily learning how to stand after having done all to stand, regardless of the weight of the burdens that we must carry. We must stand, regardless of how we are made to feel about ourselves and our decisions. We must do all to stand. We are in a place now of change, and being in this place of change, we cannot be despaired. We cannot lose our hope. We cannot become blind. We must maintain our sight. Yes, the burden is heavy. Yes, it hurts for us to deal with these things. It's different and difficult for us to see certain things happen. And when our first response is, how are we going to handle this? Or our first response speaks to the evilness of racism, and we feel some kind of way about it. When that's our first response, then what happens is we are being told that we see what we're still seeing with our eyes. When we seek to understand what the true nature of what truth we are to learn from it, it is at that point that we know that we are beginning to see with the eye. And when we see with the eye, the burden is not so heavy to carry. The pain, it visits us, but we embrace the pain as being an opportunity for change. And the more we do that, the more we are able to read the signs of the times. And when we are able to read the signs of the times, it's not so much as burdensome as it has been. What I'm saying is this: when we're reading the signs of the time, we don't put ourselves in the place of being victims. We put ourselves in the place of being victors. We are only a victim if we allow ourselves to be victimized. When we realize that we are the light of the world, we do not allow ourselves to be victimized. We recognize that regardless of what comes our way, it's designed to strengthen us. It's designed to open our eye and give it even greater clarity about the wisdom of truth. And in spite of the derogatory things that are said and the damning things that are done, we see in them opportunities for change, and most definitely an opportunity to be loving kindness above anything else. Because if we are able to be loving kindness in the face of the vile nature of what we are experiencing, then we certainly can be loving kindness in the face of any epithet that's been thrown at us. Does that make sense to you? Or any questions or comments about it?
It makes sense to me.
Great. Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are no questions and no comments, then I'm going to leave you with this. Regardless of what your eyes see, is nowhere near as real as what your eye sees. Regardless of what your emotions experience, it will not outweigh the experience of your heart when your heart is in tune with the Creator. The thoughts of your mind can carry you to dark places, but the thoughts of your soul always enlighten you and frees you from those dark places. Do not allow your words to coincide with the dark places that your mind carries you to. Always allow your utterances to come from the depths of your soul, and in the process, train your mind to be one with your soul, so the day will come when you will observe with your eyes, but you will truly see with your eye. Observance with your eyes is seeing what's in front of you. Truly seeing with your eye is perceiving what the truth is in the midst of what your eyes are seeing. Are there any questions about this? If there are no questions or comments, then I'm done. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.